Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows. I'm a little flustered because I've been trying to set something up technical with the digital audio workstation for the last half hour, and it was a big pain in the butt. And I'm not going to let that dissuade you, or dissuade me, I told you I was flustered, from introducing a new plugin. And this is one that I've been working on for a goodly number of weeks now, on stream sometimes. And it's a little thing called MatrixVerb. And I can demonstrate it by my usual method of doing obnoxious music. But it might be a better idea for me simply to fire up another microphone and use that to show you what this thing can do. So yeah, this is called MatrixVerb. Let's make it a little bit more sensible. In fact, let's make it a lot more sensible. So MatrixVerb, it's a little loud. Maybe I'll turn this something a bit, make it a little less aggressive here, or smaller. So what MatrixVerb does is, this is my experiments with a householder reverb. And that's the kind of reverb algorithm where you can take 4 little delays and have them all feed back into each other in a way that gives you sort of perfect endless reverb, if you like. I'm not using 4, I'm using 8. And what that does can be heard by turning the damping entirely off. And like I said, infinite reverb can sound like this. Now, if I'm thinking clearly, it does have a small amount of fall off because I analyzed the sound of a real infinite reverb chamber, a giant concrete cavern that I found in a YouTube video, and set up the high frequencies so that they would fall off consistently to what actually happens in air. So my hope is that the damping can be plausible if set up properly. That said, I'm giving you the full effect one first. This is the one where you can set it to do anything you want. And that includes, for instance, no damping. I ain't even got into this flavor stuff yet. Or we can do a filter. And that can make it a lot darker if you want it to be darker. As you can hear, room size can be pretty small, which is weird when you have no damping. That gets pretty strange sounding. It's like a gong. And then you can also go a little weird with it to the point where it sounds pretty darn weird. That's what you can do with this infinitely small room size. But if you have a much larger damping, you get into what starts to sound like actual reverb noises. Again, this is MatrixVerb. This is the one where it can do the strangest imaginable things. So I'm going to walk through some of those right now. And with low damping, we can still have large amounts of vibrato or a really huge room size. Let's try that again. But if we start increasing the speed, it starts getting a lot weirder and more fall here. It'll spread. And of course, you can go really weird. Now, one thing you notice about this, the extremely insane effect we've got going on, this is a dual mono effect. I can demonstrate that with this little mic. Or it does do the infinite reverb thing, so let's play with that a little bit. Vibrato can go away. Room size can be a roomier kind of sound. But one key thing about that is that if you have something in the middle, it's going to spread. The dual mono doesn't extend to having things in the center stay in the center. All it's going to do is keep stuff that's isolated to one channel or another strictly on that channel. But because the reverb things are randomized somewhat, the vibrato of it is randomized, that means that even with the vibrato set to 0, you're still getting a little bit of spread. And the more you've got, the more spread you'll get. So you can get a serious spread going. Listen to the tick noise I make. Pretty much full width right away. And even with speed and vibrato at nothing, it winds up stretching out quite a lot. So yeah, this is a householder reverb, and that means it has the potentially infinite, not really infinite, but I'll get to that later, reverb thing, or you can use the damping to cut it down. It has got a slight, like I've got the speed and vibrato set up so that there's still a tiny bit of expansion there. And what that does is if you have 0 damping, it's going to replicate the sound of an infinite cavern with actual air. I measured it so that it reproduces the kind of high frequency fall off you get from that. See, it gets slightly darker. It'll work the same for really small rooms. And you can use speed or vibrato to darken things up a little bit by moving it around a little more. For instance, we'll put this here. And it works kind of like that. But that's not everything. I haven't gotten into this flavor control. The flavor control is just for MatrixVerb. I mentioned how I was using a householder algorithm, and the householder algorithm is a pretty traditional reverb. It's a way of doing reverbs where you can have very long sustains on them out of just 4 delay tanks. I'm using 2 sets of this for each channel. So I've got 8 delay tanks, and because of the randomization, it spreads a little bit. But what would happen if you tried to feed those delay tanks into each other rather than just have them run in parallel? Because they're running in parallel so that they can be a sort of more high-fitted. It's a little denser having 2 separate householder algorithms. Well, what happens when you are running these things into each other is the flavor thing comes in. One side of flavor is the householder tanks feeding into each other positively, and the other side of flavor is them feeding into each other inverted. And it gives 2 distinct characters that are just a part of the algorithm. And mostly what it does is it breaks the algorithm so it no longer works like a householder reverb anymore. Let's find out. If I set flavor to +1, I am getting a kind of spring reverb quality. We'll take the speed and vibrato down, and you can hear a kind of clang, a kind of ring going on there. Less of it means we're going to have more sustain, because damping is still a factor. And you can cut that out by using the damping, and then we're getting the springy kind of quality going on. And the less of the flavor we get, it's like an alternate way of suppressing things. We can give just a little bit of damping maybe. That has this springy kind of quality. This bong going on here. Especially at smaller sizes, it gets a real abrasive kind of spring noise going on. And that's because the householder algorithms are feeding back into each other, and they're not supposed to do that. So this is a broken reverb algorithm, but it's a broken reverb algorithm that you could like turn the filter down a little bit because it had it all cranked up, and turn a little bit more damping on it. Like this could be a spring where spring reverbs can have these little foam things near the springs, and it helps to damp them down. And this could be your spring reverb tank kind of simulation by using this flavor thing. Let's crank it all the way up. By using this flavor thing and a certain amount of damping, maybe we'll make it a slightly larger reverb tank. And doing this, we can get a very kind of dubby, reverb tanky kind of sound going on. It has that coloration, that tonality, and it's a form of unwanted resonances. But that ain't all. The positive flavor is the spring reverby kind of thing going on. If we go to the other side, we get a strangely plate reverby kind of sound. And it's canceling the very stuff that was feeding back before and still being a obnoxious kind of sound. This is not ideal. But I'll tell you what, the kind of ring that you get out of the inverse feedback, as strong as it'll go, is a kind of plate-like tone at full damping. And again, you can damp it right down and have it be the same coloration, but without kind of the honk of the full feedback. And then if you wanted to use this technology to do a kind of giant platey sound, you'd let it clang as much as it wants. Pick maybe the right reverb size. You can have MatrixVerb lets you have really unreasonable sizes and things. So this is running at 96K, and you can get a very unreasonable quality out of it. Or you can sort of tune it to something that's going to feel about right. And then Flavor goes to something smaller, and we're going to try to do a sort of bright ambience verb sound, and you can hear it going on the S's and things. We can also, we've been doing all this without any vibrato or speed, so we can spread stuff out a little bit there, and that's going to dense it up a little bit. We've got a very, very small room size, so let's go for a much larger one. And crank the damping down to 0, and then start fooling with what happens when you use small amounts of this platey sound. And when we have smaller amounts of this platey sound, we can get into more of the reverb that we might have. And again, damping is overall, and flavor tends to damp stuff that's not the weird reinforced things we're generating. And while we're at it, it might be worthwhile just to sort of solo some of this stuff, like the drum kit, and hear what we get off of just that. See, you can do that as well. Raw. So this is our platey sound. And it does have a, like, I've heard real plates. This is not far off from a real plate. This is kind of in the zone. Or and here we are in the springy sound. Let's make it a little more weird. We're getting a lot of spread even though this is just mono. And it blends with stuff. So we can do this kind of nonsense or darken it. Go full bright. Damp it down some. And then back to the platey thing. Back to the springy thing. Then normal. Oh wait, did we say normal? More like just weird craziness. there you have it. So, on that note, I think we're going to leave this set to something not too distracting. Let me move this microphone somewhere more convenient. I'm on you. Set somewhere nicely. There we go. Darn it. Come on. Good enough. Alrighty. So, that's MatrixVerb for you. That is not the only thing I'm going to do along those lines. I have other stuff coming as well. One of them is you know how you might look for presets in something like this? Because there's too many controls and it's too crazy and it does too many crazy things? Well, I thought that would be useful too. So what I did was set up a plugin where it tries to optimize all of these things for specific purposes, and the only real function it has is room size. So you can do giant and huge, and it's tuned to maximize the way that sound fades away in the air. Similar to the giant concrete cavern thing that I watched a YouTube video on, and then modeled the reverb after what would happen literally in air. But then as you make it smaller, the room size changes, and you start getting slightly less of an infinite sustain, and everything shifts and changes to compensate for it, with the exception of flavor. The alternate, simpler version I have in mind, which is going to go into the starter kit, is without these flavor things, and it's simpler in that way. It's based on just the householder algorithm. I also have a infinite reverb that's literally infinite, as in it doesn't have the realism of high frequencies falling away as they continue to sustain through air. But this is the first one because I thought that people would enjoy it most. There's the most things to play with in here, and it's got the most options as far as doing stuff with. As you know, I am supported by Patreon, and one of the things that Patreon is doing is it's supporting the development of these things, but it's also supporting like maintenance and keeping up with stuff. And on Monday, which is tomorrow, I'm going to be trying to dive back into the Console 7 plugin and work out why some people are having problems in Catalina. And I have an experiment that I can try, which works on the assumption that for some reason Catalina is not honoring certain kinds of mathematical operations properly anymore. And that'd be a terrible bug to get into. I would be really disappointed in Apple if it turns out to be this, but I can't figure out what else it is. So we're going to be doing a little bug fixing, and I've got a variety of other things in the pipeline. One of them in here, let me see if I can grab this. That synthesizer back there, I've taken all my custom patches apart and rebuilt it completely with the purpose of being able to write stuff and arrange it rather than simply having the synthesizer make stuff up. Because I've been doing that for years, and got a certain amount of flack on the unmusical quality of some of the stuff that I do and trying to jam along to it. So we're going to try to dive into composition more intensely, and that should be interesting. That's got my attention quite heavily these days. But as always, I will share everything that I come up with in the process of doing this stuff. and I'll have more pleasing music for the background of these things. If it's a little more thought out, if there's a little more structure to it. Surrounded by cables and weird microphones and things. So, with that, I guess I will bid you guys farewell for the time being. I have been Chris from Airwindows. Welcome to 2021, the year of things becoming more awesome. And I hope you enjoy MatrixVerb. MatrixVerb is here because I'm still here doing this stuff. And I really hope that you have some fun playing with it. It was fun to do. I've been doing it on those live streams. And there are many other things I will be doing going forwards. But that would be telling. So, until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.